Your dollar didn't physically change, but what you can buy with it definitely did. Let's go deeper. Inflation is typically measured by something called the Consumer Price Index, CPI. This index tracks the average prices of things people buy every day: groceries, clothes, gas, rent, and so on. When the CPI rises, it means the average basket of goods is becoming more expensive. Anything is going up. Now, not all inflation is bad. In fact, a little bit of inflation is a sign of a healthy economy. Central banks like the U.S. Federal Reserve aim for around 2% per year. Why? Because it encourages people to spend and invest instead of sitting on piles of cash. It creates forward momentum. It rewards growth. But when inflation rises too quickly or becomes unpredictable, things start to spiral.
Serious? Your monthly salary buys less, your rent increases, groceries get more expensive, and suddenly, everyday life becomes harder for everyone. Serious? This isn't just theory, it's your reality, and it's already happening. Thoughtful. To truly understand inflation, we need to look at history, because it's happened before. Calm. Let's go back to 1913, the year the Federal Reserve was created in the United States. That year, a loaf of bread cost around 6 cents. Surprised? Yes, really, $0.06. Today, the same loaf can cost $2 to $4 depending on where you live. Astonished? That's a price increase of over 6,000% across 100-plus years. This is why older generations often say, nostalgic, back in my day, a movie ticket was just $1. They're not exaggerating, that was the price. Serious. Let's look at another infamous example. Sober. In the 1970s, the U.S. experienced one of its most...
Your dollar didn't physically change, but what you can buy with it definitely did. Let's go deeper. Inflation is typically measured by something called the Consumer Price Index, CPI. This index tracks the average prices of things people buy every day: groceries, clothes, gas, rent, and so on. When the CPI rises, it means the average basket of goods is becoming more expensive. Anything is going up. Now, not all inflation is bad. In fact, a little bit of inflation is a sign of a healthy economy. Central banks like the U.S. Federal Reserve aim for around 2% per year. Why? Because it encourages people to spend and invest instead of sitting on piles of cash. It creates forward momentum. It rewards growth. But when inflation rises too quickly or becomes unpredictable, things start to spiral.
Serious? Your monthly salary buys less, your rent increases, groceries get more expensive, and suddenly, everyday life becomes harder for everyone. Serious? This isn't just theory, it's your reality, and it's already happening. Thoughtful. To truly understand inflation, we need to look at history, because it's happened before. Calm. Let's go back to 1913, the year the Federal Reserve was created in the United States. That year, a loaf of bread cost around 6 cents. Surprised? Yes, really, $0.06. Today, the same loaf can cost $2 to $4 depending on where you live. Astonished? That's a price increase of over 6,000% across 100-plus years. This is why older generations often say, nostalgic, back in my day, a movie ticket was just $1. They're not exaggerating, that was the price. Serious. Let's look at another infamous example. Sober. In the 1970s, the U.S. experienced one of its most aggressive inflationary periods. Oil prices surged, partly due to geopolitical conflict. Gas stations had long lines, interest rates skyrocketed, and prices of everything, from housing to meat, jumped rapidly. Alarming. At one point, inflation hit over 13% per year. That may not sound like much. Thoughtful, but at 13% inflation, prices double every 5.5 years. Concerned. Imagine your rent, your groceries, and your electricity bill all doubling in that time. It's devastating. Serious. More recently, in 2021 and 2022, the world saw inflation rise again, sharply. The COVID-19 pandemic had disrupted global supply chains. Governments pumped money into their economies through stimulus packages, demand surged, but supply couldn't keep up. Questioning. Result? Alarming. Inflation hit 9.1% in the U.S. in June 2022, the highest it had been in over 40 years. Emphatic. So no, inflation isn't just a textbook concept. It's real, it's recurring, and it hits harder than you think when it gets out of control. Instructive. There are several causes of inflation, and understanding them will help you see why it happens so often. Calm. Let's break it down into three major types. Explaining. Demand-pull inflation. This is what happens when there's too much demand and not enough supply. Upbeat. Let's say the economy is booming. People have jobs, disposable income, and optimism. They start spending more on homes, cars, vacations, electronics. Concerned. But companies can't produce fast enough to meet this surge in demand. Questioning. So what do? Resigned. They raise prices. Explaining. That's demand-pull inflation. Consumers pulling prices upward because they want more than the economy can supply. Instructive. Cost-push inflation. Now imagine the opposite situation. Explaining. Instead of demand going up, the cost of making things goes up.
Let's say the price of oil spikes. Suddenly, it costs more to transport goods, heat factories, and operate machinery. Companies see their expenses rising, and guess what? They pass those costs on to you, the consumer. Even if demand stays the same, prices go up. That's cost-push inflation, caused by rising production costs. Built-in inflation, aka wage price spiral. This one's a little more complex, but super important. When workers see prices rising, they demand higher wages to maintain their standard of living. If employers give in and increase wages, they then need to raise their product prices to cover that extra cost. And around it goes. Prices go up, workers want raises, wages go up, prices go up again. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. And once that spiral starts, it's very difficult to stop. All three of these forces, demand pull, cost push, and wage price spirals, can interact and make inflation even worse. It's like a storm of economic pressure, hitting consumers from all directions. So the big question is, who fights inflation? The answer lies with your country's central bank. In the United States, that's the Federal Reserve, or simply the Fed. Their job is to ensure two things: price stability, maximum employment. And one of their most powerful tools is interest rates. Here's how it works. When inflation starts rising too fast, the Fed can increase interest rates. This makes borrowing more expensive for businesses, for banks, and for regular people. So what happens? People borrow less, spend less, and invest less. This slows down the economy, which helps cool off demand. And with less demand, prices stop rising so quickly. On the flip side, when inflation is low or during a recession, the Fed might cut interest rates to make borrowing cheaper. This encourages spending and investment, which helps jumpstart economic growth. Think of the Fed like a thermostat for the economy. Too hot? Turn it down with higher rates. Too cold? Turn it up with lower ones. But here's the catch. Raising interest rates too quickly can lead to recession. Cutting them too much can lead to runaway inflation. So the Fed has to walk a very fine line, balancing growth and stability, managing the economy without tipping it into chaos. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, and yet most people don't even realize it's happening. Let's stop for a second and talk about you. You might be thinking, okay, I get that inflation is a big economic thing, but how does it really affect me, day to day? Well, in more ways than you think. Let's start with your savings. Suppose you have 1,000,000 rupees sitting in a savings account, and you don't touch it for a year. If inflation is at 6%, your money loses 6% of its value simply by sitting still. That 1,000,000 rupees now buys you what 94,000 rupees would have bought the year before. Think about it. You didn't spend it, you didn't invest it, and yet you lost value. Inflation punishes inaction. Next, your salary. Let's say you got a 4% raise at work this year. Sounds good, right? But if inflation is running at 6%, you've actually lost purchasing power. You're technically making more, but you can afford less. This is what economists call a real wage decline. And it's why many people feel like they're working harder than ever, but still falling behind. Now think about rent and groceries. Even small increases add up fast. If rent goes from 20,000 rupees to 22,000 rupees,
That's 24,000 rupees more you're paying annually for the same apartment. If your monthly grocery bill climbs from 5,000 rupees to 6,000 rupees, that's an extra 12,000 rupees a year. These aren't luxury purchases, these are survival expenses. Inflation doesn't just squeeze your wallet, it forces you to rethink your priorities, cut back on essentials, and sometimes even delay major life decisions. And if you're someone saving for a goal, like a house, college, or retirement,
Think of it as building financial armor. Buy assets, not liabilities.
inflation hurts savers, but it can help owners. Let me explain. If you buy an asset like a house and inflation rises, the value of your house often rises too. At the same time, if you took a loan to buy that house, the amount you owe doesn't increase. You're paying off that loan in cheaper currency over time. So inflation punishes cash holders, but can reward those who own appreciating assets. Don't just spend, own. Learn financial literacy. This might sound basic, but it's powerful. The more you understand how money works, how interest rates, debt, inflation, and investing all connect, the more control you gain. You'll start to see opportunities where others see obstacles. The best inflation hedge isn't just gold, real estate, or stocks, it's education. Avoid lifestyle creep. Finally, a warning. As your income grows, you'll feel tempted to spend more, upgrade your car, move to a better place, eat out more often. That's called lifestyle inflation. And while it feels good in the moment, it makes you more exposed when prices rise across the board. Keep your expenses in check. Grow your income faster than your lifestyle. Clarifying, it's not about being cheap, it's about being smart. Here's a side of inflation people rarely talk about, the psychological toll. When prices rise unexpectedly, people feel confused, anxious, and even betrayed. Think about it. You plan your budget, you save money, you do everything right, and then bam, your rent jumps 15%, eggs cost twice as much, and your savings are worth less. It feels unfair, and it affects behavior. People stop spending on fun things. They delay purchases, even necessary ones. Consumer confidence drops. Businesses lose sales. This can trigger a recession, even if the economy's fundamentals are okay. Why? Because money is emotional. We don't just make financial decisions with spreadsheets. We make them with fear, hope, memory, and anxiety. And inflation distorts all of that. In extreme cases, this leads to something even more dangerous: hyperinflation. When people lose faith in the value of money, they start spending it as fast as possible, before it loses more value. In places like Zimbabwe and Venezuela, inflation reached hundreds of thousands of %. People used wheelbarrows full of cash to buy groceries. Savings? Gone. Salaries? Worthless. That's what happens when trust in money disappears. And once it breaks, it's incredibly hard to restore. Even in more stable countries, inflation creates deep distrust. Distrust in governments, distrust in banks, distrust in long-term planning.
So when we talk about inflation, we're not just talking about prices. We're talking about confidence, the very foundation of a functioning economy. So let's bring it all together. Inflation isn't just a number on the news. It's a force that shapes your life, quietly, daily, relentlessly. It affects your income, your savings, your future, and your mental well-being. But it's not unbeatable. If you understand what inflation is, learn how it works, invest smartly, diversify your income, avoid unnecessary spending, and stay financially literate, then you'll be miles ahead of the average person. Remember, the game of money is always being played. Inflation is just one of the players. But once you know the rules, you stop being a victim and start playing to win. If you found this video helpful, consider hitting subscribe. I make more content that helps you take control of your financial life, one smart decision at a time. Until next time, stay aware, stay prepared, and let your money work as hard as